Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, councillors. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the ordinary meeting of the Wellington Shire Council on Tuesday, the 18th of December. Members of the public gallery should note that the council records and publishes council's meeting via YouTube to enhance the accessibility of council meetings to the broader Wellington community. These recordings are also archived and may be published on council's website for viewing by the public or used for publicity or information purposes. At the appropriate time during the meeting, members of the gallery may address the council, at which time their image, comments or submissions will be recorded. Members of the public who are not in attendance at the council meeting but who wish to communicate with the council via the webcasting chat room should lodge their questions or comments early in the meeting to ensure that their submissions can be dealt with at the end of the meeting. Please should gallery visitors and councillors ensure that mobile phones and other electronic devices are turned off or in silent mode for the duration of the meeting. If we stand for the acknowledgement and the prayer, we acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land, the Gunai people, and pay respects to their elders past and present. Almighty God, we ask your blessing upon the Wellington Shire Council, its councillors, officers, staff and their families. We pray for your guidance in our decisions so that the true good of the Wellington Shire Council may result to the benefit of all residents and community groups. Amen. We have apologies from
Councillor Gailmar and our CEO, David.
Thank you, John. Any declaration of conflict of interest? There being none. Confirmation of minutes of the previous meeting. Councillor Bye.
Thanks, Mayor. I move the Council adopt the minutes and resolutions of the ordinary Council meeting of the 4th of December 2018.
We have a second for that. Councillor Stevens. Councillor Bye, you wish to speak to that? Thank you very much. Is there any business arising from the previous meeting? Acting CEO?
No.
Thank you. Item A6, acceptance of late items. Councillor Crossley.
Are we going to have it on the... Okay. I move that we have an acceptance of a late item to deal with item A8 regarding the Peafowl.
Do I have a second? Councillor Stevens. I think at this point we need to now move that motion. Is the motion opposed? If not, the motion's carried. Councillor Crossley, do we have someone who wishes to speak? I think, Tony Smith, would you like to speak to this item?
Is this the petition?
Yeah. Yes, it is.
Oh, sorry, I wasn't aware.
Yeah, it is a bit confusing, Mayor, so that we're not talking about this late acceptance of the late item now, are we?
No, we're talking about item A8.2.
Which is...
That we deal with.
That we deal with, yes.
We haven't heard the petition yet.
We always accept the late item first before we then...
Yeah, I couldn't
Yeah.
remember that, but that's why Tony's confused.
Of course,
Yeah. So we in fact need to move item A8.2, and that's up to you. Sorry, Councillor Crossley. So if you'd like to move that motion. Sorry, Tony, for that process issue.
You can't move the motion.
Sorry, I can't move the... I'll just clarify an issue. Usually, because it's a late item, usually it's in the agenda, but we are going to be dealing with the petition, so that's what you'll be talking about. And after you have speak, then I'll be able to move the motion.
Okay. Well, that's everyone else clear apart from me. So, Tony, I think we're now in your hands to speak to the petition.
Thanks, Mr Mayor, councillors, ladies and gents. Thanks for the opportunity to come back and talk to you. I presented a petition to council a couple of weeks ago, a week or so ago, that you'll be receiving today. I accompanied a letter with that petition that talked about the safety of the peafowl in the Botanic Gardens, which you're aware of. We have previous history in that. I have since received a response signed by the Mayor, I thank you for that, and it acknowledges receipt of my earlier correspondence and also mentions that work has suspended in that facility for the time being until February. My concern was about there is at least now one peahen nesting in that area, so I've asked for the area to be undisturbed for the time being. The petition has a number of signatories to it requesting whatever the words are, believing that enclosure of some kind is required until at least the birds become used to the change in their habitat, and asking the council, calling upon the council to ensure the safety and security of the peafowl. I have some supplementary signatures as well, so I'd actually like to present a further 66 if I may. If I pass that to someone, thank you very much. And I believe there may be some more coming today. So I guess the point I make is this is not me and a couple of other doddery folks from around the region concerned about the peafowl. It does have a fair amount of community support. There are around 300 or so people who are expressing their concern, and we again call upon council. I know you have a management plan. The management plan does talk about looking at future impacts. It does talk about the potential for a fence to maybe be reconsidered at another date, but I do I guess just want to reiterate there is a significant amount of community concern. Many of the folk that we speak to aren't aware that the fence is coming down, or weren't aware that the fence is coming down eventually, so you may see some other feedback from other folks.
Thanks, Tony. Now I think, Carolyn, I'm in your hands to move the motion.
I move that 1. Council receive the attached petition in relation to safety and security of peafowl during the modifications of the Sale Botanic Gardens. 2. Council notes that a letter was sent to the head petitioner on the 12th of December 2018 to confirm that Council has a publicly available management plan for the peafowl located in the Sale Botanic Gardens, and this plan is being utilised to guide decision making in relation to the peafowl. And 3, in accordance with the project timelines for the Garden of Life project, the current fauna enclosure fencing will not be removed prior to March 2019. And 4, the Chief Executive Officer will write to the head petitioner to advise the Council's decision in relation to this matter.
Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor.
I just have an amendment to that, if I could put that to the petitioner, please. I wonder whether we can include those additional names of which Tony has put forward tonight, included within that, within section 2 somehow. Would that be acceptable?
I'm happy as the mover of that to accept that amendment.
Okay, so maybe, Council has a letter sent to the head petitioner, so maybe Council receives the attached petition in regard to safety, including the additional names submitted tonight. Perhaps we can include. Sorry? I'm happy with that. Just as long as we can include those extra names that Tony has brought along tonight. So,
Thanks, Councillor McCubbin. Councillor Crossley, you're happy with that amendment?
So just let's get the words right. So they're just including. Just that. I'm happy with there. Including the additional. Sorry. Late. Okay, I'm happy to call them late. Late. Names, including the late names received at the meeting. Yep.
Can you say this meeting?
At this meeting. Yeah,
yep.
This meeting's better. Sorry, Mayor. I just thought we'd put to clarify that.
That's good.
Okay, so at that point, the amendment's acceptable. Do I now have a seconder for that motion? Is Councillor Bye, I believe. Is that motion opposed? If not, the motion is carried. Councillor Crossley.
Thank you. And thank you, Tony. We know that you are concerned. I just wanted to say that not to lose sight of the original project and the consultation that was done for this project. And the project is actually not the removal of peafowl. That was not a project. And it certainly was stated on the 18th of September that in the revamping of this area of the Sale Botanic Gardens, there was no plans to remove the peafowl. So that's been a stated position of the council from the very beginning of the process. And in fact, when the press release of the final Sale Botanic Gardens Garden for Life project, which was designed by renowned landscape architect Andrew Laidlaw, who is the consultant for the Royal Botanic Gardens, and it was very exciting that we had his services and the community were engaged in that process to create this new and exciting space that's going to deal with a whole variety of areas of experiences, building on the forest that is already there and creating plantings, water play and engaged areas. But people may have missed that at the very bottom paragraph, or second bottom paragraph, while the existing wildlife fencing will be removed for this project, the wild peafowl who have lived in the Botanic Gardens will continue to do so with protected nesting areas in grounds, plantings around and existing throughout the gardens, but also in new ones created. So the existence and the preparation and acknowledgement that provision for the peafowl was in the very beginning of the design. So it was never far from our minds. And I know that it's an iconic thing people see in the Botanic Gardens of these, mainly the male peafowl strutting around showing off. And I think it's also really a part of the strategy that's on the management plan that's available to all to see, quite a precise and concise document. And really in the introduction, and which comes to yourself, Tony, that the management plan part 2, it says, recognises that the management of peafowl is the shared responsibility of both the Wellington Shire Council and the community. So we really are engaged and glad that our community is concerned and interested in the peafowl. But I think there has been some misconceptions about how peafowl act and how they exist and how they have existed in the past. Because that certainly the reports that were had and the statement was that the peafowl, I think, would be no more or no less protected than they have been previously, because most of the predators had access to that fence. They historically nested all over the Botanic Gardens. In fact, the only successful nesting had been recently, I think in the last 2 seasons, were down by the Leaf in the new scrubby native plantings and tall tusky areas, which is actually their more preferred sites. I certainly have gone there on a number of occasions, and I've chatted with the team members that work there, and they were saying that sadly they had discovered many carcasses, I suppose, or remains of chicks that had been rounded up and corralled into the corner of the fence. So in hindsight, the fence was probably a danger to the chicks rather than a protection. There's already been plantings made that are growing quite vigorously along the side. If you walk down to go to Lake Guyatt on the road between I can't remember the name of the road, near the Croquet, there's a whole lot of plantings that are down there that aren't really an active human spot, that once they grow will be a really protected area. And so that there has been consideration of the management, and there's certainly in the plan is that we'll be monitoring what occurs. But I'd say we really have to look at the main reason was they were taken into consideration, and this new development was seen to be of an advantage to the whole community and not a detriment to the peafowl. So we are interested that the community is interested, but we really want to make sure that they understand the whole context of the planning, and their well-being has been considered, just like the well-being of all the wildlife that frequents that fantastic facility. And we hope that this new Garden for Life will actually add to that facility up there, with, as I say, without endangering the peafowl. But we have, from the very beginning, looked at their welfare, and we'll be under the guidelines. We'll be monitoring their progress and the progress of this fantastic project. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Crosley. Could I just add to that, a community which is passionate is a community which is engaged, and quite simply, we welcome the engagement. Thank you for being here, Tony.
Is it appropriate to respond?
No, it's under the process. No, it's not. Moving on, A7, no notices of motion. I can see A8, no receiving of petitions or joint letters today. No. No, nothing under invited addresses. Nothing under A10, question of notice. Item A11, Mayor's Report. Councillor Hole.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to move that the Mayor and Council Activity report be noted.
Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Ripper. Is that motion opposed? If not, the motion is carried. Councillor Hole?
Just briefly, Mayor, anybody that's read the report will see that all councils have had a very active month. They've attended everything from Remembrance Day events around the Shire to annual meetings to rock concerts to model aeroplanes flying up and down, and on every occasion have taken the opportunity when they're there to communicate with the community, to hear what they're talking about and to bring that information back here. So I would like to thank all councillors for the effort they put in. There are other places that they went to that are not there, but it's part of the delegations. But all in all, we are a hard-working council, regardless of what anybody says, and you don't find our names in the paper like some of the councillors around us. Okay.
Thank you very much. Moving on to report of delegates. Do we have any report of delegates tonight? Councillor Hole, did you have a delegates report tonight?
Oh, sorry.
God, I can't keep up with the activity. Thanks, Mayor. Yes, Friday a week ago I attended the National Timber Council's annual meeting, of which I'm the delegate, and I ended up having to chair the meeting because the national president wasn't able to be there. It was a very good meeting. We had about 14 in the room, 5 on Zoom, and 3 came in by teleconference. So it was a bit hard to keep everybody involved, but I think we achieved it. It was an excellent meeting. One of the great things that came out of it is the Growing a Better Australia, and it's a federal job, to plant 1 billion trees for jobs and growth in regional Victoria, and they're looking at the rural sector to be able to put I suppose an additional crop in for long-term harvest and gain. What they've discovered now with the new use of timber, and I'll read from here some of the new science that's come out, is the technological advances that have happened as using engineered wood products, the construction of high-rise buildings entirely out of wood, food additives, pharmaceutical and medical applications, biofuels derived from wood that can replace fossil fuels, and wood plastics that can be turned into anything from excuse me, car components to recyclable replacement plastic bags. So the humble tree, which is renewable, plantable, environmentally sound, is coming back into its own and being pushed by CSIRO and the federal government. What the federal government has offered is for 4 research development places in Australia. Currently, Mount Gambier has taken it up with the South Australian government. Launceston has taken it up with the Tasmanian government. And there are 2 spots left and 4 states are going to go for it. The federal government is putting up $2 million to establish this research unit, and they require a $2 million injection also from state government. And to make it easy, they've allowed for the state government to make their payment over 4 years, $500,000 over 4 years. I took the opportunity because we had the guest speaker from the Department of Agriculture and Water Resources National Forestry Policy Director to throw in Gippsland's name as an ideal place for Victoria, keeping in mind that we will be competing against Western Australia, Queensland and also New South Wales. So if our job is to have a look at a regional forest hub, to get involved with all this new development, this new exciting, I suppose technological advances, and just one of the things that I mentioned there was the medical research, and the cellulose from trees now being used to form rib replacements, ridges on noses. So the tree is not only just being squeezed for manufacturing paper, it's being squeezed for, and particularly from the native forest, because it's organic, and therefore there's no sprays, and so it's good for human health. So I would look for something exciting down the track. I hope that collectively our councils can get their nose into this, and that the federal government will look at us with a smile.
Thank you, Councillor Hull. Who was to believe that Pinocchio was really just a children's story? Well done. Tony, all of us up here have in fact got to sit through this because it's our job, but you're at liberty to leave if you wish to do so.
Thanks very much.
We could move on to item C1, Chief Executive Officer's report. Have a mover? Councillor Rossetti.
I think that's C1.1, Mr Mayor, and I move the Chief Executive Officer's report be received.
Have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Bye. Is that motion opposed? If not, the motion is carried. Councillor Rossetti.
Thanks, Mayor. Just quickly, there was a couple of things in there that I think are really pretty special. One of them is the water tower works. I know that most of the councillors have had a tour through the new water tower that Peter Syne and a group in the community have been driving. But it's quite an extraordinary building there. The water tower, of course, being one of the originally designed by Granger, who also designed things like the Swing Bridge. And many of the buildings that are of significant public infrastructure throughout Australia and some internationally. But it's always been a bit off limits to the public, apart from us as kids climbing up the side and jumping into the top when we definitely should not have done that. But it was also very unsafe inside because the ladders weren't very good, the floors weren't in great nick. It had been used for many years as a storage shed for the mowers and parks and gardens equipment, and in fact also for Outback Maddie, who was a contestant on MasterChef, I think it was, who was living in there when he was homeless. He spoke to it at one of his presentations here. So it was severely degraded, and to see it now coming back to its former glory, and ultimately it will be open to the public for them to understand about the importance of waterworks in our community. I think it's a fabulous project that's been beautifully put together by so many in our community and supported by people who've gone to the Barney Grumleys of Barney Castles of the world, for instance, hand making the shutters on the windows. And if people get a chance to have a look there who haven't seen it already, I certainly commend it to them. The other thing I wanted to mention was the SA Night at the Opera. This is something that is typically only available to those who dress up in dinner suits in the capital cities who've got a lot of money. That's probably sledging people I shouldn't sledge off. But the quality of that night with the Australian Opera and the Victorian State Orchestra was quite extraordinary. And for it to be put on, as it is every couple of years, as a free event to our community is really special. We were so privileged to have a chat to some of the performers afterwards. And to understand their story. And they were taking the time out to talk to our school communities, to talk to them about how they can actually become involved in that sort of level of performance. So I commend not just ESO for bringing them here, while it's great they did, but also commend Opera Australia and the Victorian State Orchestra for actually getting out there and getting amongst our regional areas to bring to our young people especially, the joy of music, but also the ability to understand that they can actually achieve what these other people have achieved at the height of their professions from where they are now. Because sometimes sitting in a rural community where you sort of sit down a main street, there's not much going on, and you're not sure what's going on, to actually be inspired by people like that is extraordinary. That was a very special night. 2 years' time, if people didn't get a chance to go there, get in early, get some tickets. By all accounts, it should be on again in 2 years' time. They're bringing here again. So I won't sing to you in my opera voice. I did have a crack in the shower the next morning, and my family weren't particularly happy. But thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Rossetti. Can I just endorse what you just said, particularly in regard to the visit to the water tower, which in fact was then followed by a visit to Boysdale. And if in fact you could bottle the passion that we have in our community and sprinkle it around, we would be incredibly well served. We have a great community who are giving so much back to the community that we're very privileged. So thank you for those comments. If I move on to item C 1.2, November performance report. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Stevens.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor. I'm happy to move the Council receive and note the November 2018 Council performance report as attached.
Seconder for that motion? Councillor Rossetti by just a fraction. Is that motion opposed? If not, the motion is carried. Councillor Stevens.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor. Look, I won't really dwell on the actual financial figures. I think they speak for themselves, Mayor, and show that, yes, the Council is in a strong financial position and is really on target to achieve everything we set out to for the 2018-2019 year. Just a couple of other matters in the activities from the performance report. I think it's interesting to note that of course all our outdoor pools were opened on the 23rd of November for the season. Unlike last year, we didn't have quite favourable weather, so I don't think there was quite a good attendance. We had exceptional attendance, given the fact, of course, that first day was free. But I note subsequently that Aqua Energy had a open day on this following Sunday, the 25th, where over 500 people were in attendance, and that was so successful that we're looking at holding another similar day in February. And I just make the note that yes, people to find out whether our outdoor pools are open. I encourage everyone to look at the Aqua Energy Facebook page every afternoon, as I've been doing, and it reports whether the pools are going to be open the next day based on our 25-degree temperature trigger. So if I can access Facebook and actually work that out, I'm sure that 99% of the community can do likewise and follow what's going on with our pools. Another thing that's of interest, I note that our business unit has referred a number of businesses to both the LVA and RDV for support in the last few months, and that in fact there have been 9 businesses successful with the LVA and received a total of $348,000, and 2 businesses have been successful with RDV funding and have received 402 or 422, I can't even read my own writing now, 422 I think that is, $1,000. So congratulations to those businesses, and well done to our business unit for the work that they're doing in trying to support economic development and small business in our municipality. And the last thing I'll just note is that we also have helped facilitate with Planning Scheme Amendment C105 to put that forward to the Minister, which is going to facilitate the building of a new railway bridge at Stratford, which is another major project that we have, I mean, we're not funding it obviously, but we've been supportive of. So just a couple of things that we've done, and I think it just goes to, I keep saying it's just probably a broken record, just the diversity of activities that local government gets involved in, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stevens. Moving on to item C 2.1, Assembly of Councillors. Councillor Bye.
Thanks, Mayor. I move the Council note and receive the attached Assembly of Councillor records for the period 27th of November 2018 to 11th of December 2018.
Seconder for that motion? Councillor Hole. Is that motion opposed? Not the motion is carried. Councillor Bye? Okay. Moving on to item C 2.2, Adoption of Rating Strategy 2018 to 2021. Councillor Hole.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I'm going to move the Council adopt the Rating Strategy 2018 to 2021 as attached.
Seconder for that motion? Councillor Bye. Is that motion opposed? If not, the motion is carried. Councillor Hole.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, the rating strategy sets out to explain to the the people, the council's rating system under which we're allowed to operate. We are limited in our deliberations by the Local Government Act of 1989. But we base our rating strategy upon 1, providing sufficient funding to maintain a wide range of services and capital works to meet current and future needs. 2, to maintain our assets. 3, ensuring rate rises are in line with the rate cap as determined by the Minister of the day. 4, meet long-term financial sustainability as per our long-term financial plan. Some of the other areas in the document, which is pretty well detailed, includes our current rating system, deals with differential rates, site value, objections to valuations, municipal charge, deferred payments, state concessions and payment options. So that goes out to the community to know exactly where we're going, and anybody that has any complaints, and we get very, very few as we know, in relation to rating strategy, has the opportunity to see where we're going and why we've determined it.
Thanks, Councillor Hull. Moving on to item C2.3, adoption of Council Policy Manual. Councillor McCubbin.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I'd like to move the Council revoke the existing 2018 Council Policy Manual and replace it with the updated 2019 Council Policy Manual as attached.
There a seconder for that motion? Councillor Crosley. Is that motion opposed? Not. The motion is carried. Councillor McCubbin.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to the other councillors for allowing me to speak on this, the biggest document that we have tonight. This is also a very exciting document, and for those of you interested in, well, you know, what is this thing called council? What is it? How does it work? What are the rules encompassing us? Then I urge you to have a look at this document, which we are required under legislation to look at every year. And might I say, this year is a particularly good read. And I mean that quite seriously. It talks about a huge plethora of council activities, and it, if you like, it outlines our response, how that response should be taken into being on a whole raft of things. And as you can see, some of the issues on there, from the fire services property levy to privacy information, freedom of information, to car parking, to major events, and so on and so forth. There are just 3 things that I can talk about and focus on in what has been which is a very exciting document. One is the inclusion of a bunch of material from the Human Rights Charter, the Victorian Charter on Human Rights and Responsibilities. It's been very much imbued within the context of this document. This outlines a series of fundamental rights that we as human beings and as people who work within the council structure, and as I don't like to call them customers, our ratepayers, the people we serve, how they also interact. It's their freedom of religion, it is their freedom to be safe, their freedom of security, their freedom from privacy, and so on and so forth. That Human Rights Charter, that Bill of Rights, if you like, is very much included within each aspect of our workings within council. It's the way we treat people, the respect that we should be paying to people. And council takes this very, very seriously. The idea of this policy document is that we have a set of principles by which we declare to our population that we will live by. And including things like fundamental rights and responsibilities, I think, is really, really important. A second thing that I think that I'd like to focus on is a very strong kind of tightening up, if you like, of fraud control and of transparency and conflicts, if you like. And that's not to say that we have that in our organisation, but that we recognise that governments are more and more required to behave in a way that develops trust with their community. And I absolutely acknowledge that trust is one thing which the community is asking more and more of us, and rightly so. And occasionally they are let down by governments in terms of what we are doing behind the scenes. And I'm really, really impressed with the way this works in terms of things like council has a zero tolerance approach to fraud and corruption. I'm reading straight off the screen. And refer any fraudulent or corrupt activity to appropriate law enforcement officers, and goes down to actually go through a complete framework of the way that we should do that. It even mentions some things like that during the induction process we must outline these activities entirely, and look there There it goes through and examples of internal fraud and then of external fraud as well, and the way that we need to act. It also talks about enacting a yearly review for every employee on ensuring that they are absolutely transparent and correct within their framework of reporting suspected fraud and corruption and acting in an appropriate manner. This is so extensive in terms of a corruption control, if you like, an ICAC. It's so extensive that I think the federal government would reject it. It is absolutely amazing that the way they've outlined it. Now, I absolutely get that it's easy enough to write on a piece of paper, but for all of us, it's really important that now that we live up to those statutes that have been put down. And understand, this is not just about the staff, it's about the councillors sitting around this table. It's the way we treat each other and the way that we treat our ratepayers and the staff. So I think that's really important, even down to things like accepting corporate gifts. And this hasn't changed, I know, but to understand that councillors, every time they receive a gift in any way, shape or form, they need to outline that. Those declarations for the mayor must not exceed $200, for individual councillors $150. Really on a very small amount of money, that what people might think of as a small amount of money. Councillors are required to identify that and to explain that and to recognise the conflicts that can create. The gift test, as you like, it goes through that gift there. I really like that last one, the trust one. Would accepting this gift benefit of hospitality diminish public trust? You know, are we, in accepting some gift, in going somewhere and accepting some largesse from someone, which happens all the time and people do that, is that going to decrease the public trust in the institution of which we serve? And that's really, really important. So please, I do ask you to have a look at what the actions that we have put down and the way that has been distributed through the organisation. So that's the second one. The third one that I think is really important, and I'm sure each and every one of you have different, and I apologise for that, but the one that I really like is the procurement policy. I think, again, it really outlines council's activities in regard to procurement, particularly locally produced materials. It insists on council looking to support local industry. And I think all of us sitting around the table want them to do that. And we do it in a number of ways, which is outlined within the policy document. It also asks us to encourage things from the various sectors, so disability sectors, show leadership in that sector by procuring services and items from those listed in the disability section, and also those that employ Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders. So we're looking to kind of encourage that sort of workforce from disadvantaged communities. But most importantly from our local community, and it's important to note that despite the big things that we do around here, over 70% of our procurements come from the local sector. One in particular that I would like to mention too, which is quite unique to this council, a number of councils have it, but I think it's fairly special, is in fact our wood encouragement policy. And I'd like to, just move on from what Councillor Hull was mentioning before. We do have a wood encouragement policy which champions our forest and forest products. I note that we sit here in a room which contains a number of examples of forest products, and this is an example of where the rubber hits the road, if you like, to use a bad metaphor. That council actively went out and engaged local forestry products within the development of this precinct. And it did that because it was mentioned in the policy, and the reality of it is now that we're sitting here, I think the wood comes from now, from Gippsland. That Councillor Hull probably knows more about it than I.
It's just that sort of close up from now, but everything else comes from running.
There you go. And see, and if you like, that is a practical example of us encouraging forest and forest product industries. And Councillor Hull's absolutely right when he suggests that wood, if you like, is now becoming one of the most amazing materials. Last Thursday, Sustainability Victoria invited me down to look at a 6-star sustainable building within the City of Melbourne, which the City of Melbourne just put up. It's in Docklands, it's their new library. It's a 3-storey building constructed out of wood. And it's 6-star rating. And they're bragging about it, about how good this is and how fantastic it is, and it's all made out of wood. And it's light, it's environmentally sensitive, it's a wonderful building, constructed out of wood. And it's something that we should be very proud of, the fact that we live in an area where forest products are being encouraged. So I do ask you to have a look at the procurement policy, because that is another thing in which I'm very proud of within this document. So please, if you're interested in the way council works, from how we treat people on nature strips to all sorts of things, it's in that policy document, and it gives me enormous pleasure to show the updated version tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor McCubbin. We again will be the envy of all of our peers, because I don't know that anyone has made a council policy manual quite that livable. Good job, you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item C 2.4, Instrument of Appointment and Authorisation, Planning Environment Act 1987. Councillor Crosley.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that Council, in the exercise of the power conferred by Section 224 of the Local Government Act 1989, the Act, and the other legislation referred to in the attached S11A Instrument of Appointment of Authorisation, the instrument in brackets, resolve that one Council Officer, Julian Pollard, be appointed and authorised as set out in the instrument as provided at Attachment 1, and that 2, the instrument be signed and sealed by the Chief Executive Officer.
Second of that motion, Councillor Stevens. Is that motion opposed? If not, the motion is carried. Councillor Crosley.
Thank you. This is just sort of a bit of paperwork, really, because previously the officers whose duties include, as it says just down below, which again I will read because it clarifies the point, council officers whose duties included in administration and enforcement under the Planning and Environment Act 1987 must now be authorised and appointed as an authorised officer by a resolution of council. Previously, this authorisation and appointment was achieved through the council to Chief Executive Officer by the delegation process. So now that's what we've just done. We've got the council officer, Julian Pollard, acts with that authority, and it had to be done through this process. So basically, just to formalise it.
Thanks, Councillor Crosley. Moving on to item C 3.1, the Quarterly Strategic Land Use Planning Update. Councillor Bye.
Thanks, Mayor. I move the Council receive the 2018 fourth quarterly update on the Strategic Land Use Planning Work Program included in Attachment 1 to this report.
Second of that motion, Councillor Crosley. Is that motion opposed? If not, the motion is carried. Councillor Bye.
Thanks, Mayor. I just thought I'd cover up on a couple of things that are in the report. One of the most important things that's going to happen could be up for about 20 years for sale is a North Sale Development Plan. Look, I'd like to congratulate the Planning Department. The amount of work that has gone into the planning for the exciting North Sale development has been amazing. It integrates 294 hectares of land to go into residential land. That'll give Sale a supply of 15 to 20 years of residential land. So you can imagine the amount of work that has to go into coordinating all of those different property owners and forming a plan with all the different things that need to go in, the amount of pipes that go in the ground and power and how to work for the future and where our wastewater goes. So a real congratulations. That will be coming in the new year and it'll be all finalised and finished, and it's a real exciting piece of work that we look forward to seeing. The other thing that is happening is straight out our windows. The Port of Sale East Bank Development Study. Again, this is land that was formerly occupied by the Sale Specialist School and the old high school. It's a very important piece of land. It's right next door to the building we stand in now, which we've seen has been a great facility and well patronised. So we need to be careful in what we do with the land next door, because we want to make sure that we utilise that to complement the building we're in. So we have a consultant that is actually looking at that now to come back with ideas for us. So that'll be quite good. And then the final thing is the yarra butter factory. It's great to see that there are some old buildings that unfortunately have slipped through the fingers, which we've rectified for a heritage overlay. So we have written to the Minister to add that to the Heritage Register, which is a great result.
Thanks, Councillor Bye. Moving on to item C 3.2, the October monthly planning decisions. Councillor Bye, I think it's you again.
Thanks, Mayor. I move the Council note the report on recent planning permit trends and planning application determinations between the 1st of October and the 31st of October 2018.
Second to that motion, Councillor Stevens. Is that motion opposed? If not, the motion is carried. Councillor Bye.
Thanks, Mayor. There was 45 planning decisions made, which was fantastic. And again, the team's done a great result. I thought I'd point out just a couple of things that are on that report. We've approved a permit on the Rosedale-Longford Road for a Class B broiler farm. What does Class B mean? It means there's 8 sheds and 400,000 birds will be housed in those sheds. So another great result for the Wellington Shire to have a great employer that is coming to the town. Also, we have approval on there for a piggery. You might think a piggery at Longford isn't much, but there's 200 sows approved. And you work out how many little pigs come out of a sow, that's a hell of a lot of pigs that will be getting produced from that farm. Again, a lot of jobs will be created. I'd also like to congratulate the planning team. They had 96% of decisions made within 60 days. The rural average is sitting at 72%. So again, they've exceeded what they need to, and a great result. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Bye. Moving on to item C 3.3, Planning Scheme Amendment C103, West Sale Industrial Rezoning. Councillor Crossley.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that one, Council, pursuant to Section 8A of the Planning Environment Act 1987, request the Minister for Planning to authorise Council as the planning authority to prepare Amendment C103, West Sale Industrial Rezoning, see attached 1, to the Wellington Planning Scheme, and 2, Council pursuant to Section 20 bracket 1 and 20 bracket 2 of the Planning Environment Act 1987 request the Minister for Planning to exempt Council from giving full notice under Section 19 of the Planning Environment Act 1987.
Second to that motion, Councillor Rossetti. Is that motion opposed? Not, the motion is carried. Councillor Crossley.
Thank you, Mayor. This is in regard to the recent adopted West Sale Warwick Industrial Land Supply. This process was started with consultation with the community in August 2017, and it's the responsibility of Council to make sure that there's an appropriate amount of land available, just like the North Sale study. This is to make sure there's enough industrial land. There was consultation, there was 3 sites identified, and then the most sort of successful site, and the ones after the consultation that was considered the most appropriate, was marked candidate 1 of 2 up there. In the motion it was noted that we also, under the notice, that we don't have to do a broad consultation because we did so much consultation prior, but we'll be advertising to the landholders that are adjacent to that process. This is part of the state government's impact of reducing red tape to enable these activities to go forth. So this will be hopefully fast track, so these plots will be available. So I think that's all that's covered. Yes, I think that's covered it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Crossley. I'll move on to item C4.1, Delegated Authority to enter into contracts, Contract 2019-038, etc. Councillor Rossetti.
Thank you, Mayor. I move the Council delegate authority to the Chief Executive Officer to enter into the following contracts within budget. Contract 2019-038, Maffra Street Cape Mural Works, Johnson Street South. Contract 2019-040, Johnson's Lane, Dutson, Construction and Sealing. And Contract 2019-041, Foster Street's Streetscape Works in Sale.
Second for that motion. Councillor Bye, I think, was marginal on that. Is that motion opposed? If not, motion's carried. Councillor Rossetti.
Thanks, Mayor. Just to say that it's not unusual around this time of year to have some delegated authority to get things done, so not held up with the January break when there are no formal council meetings. Clearly here we've said it's within budget, so it's something that we're actually completely on top of, and it's within the figures that we're expecting. These works are all very exciting, things that are happening around town. Seeing the works continuing to be done in Maffra, for instance, in the main street there, there's a number of stages. This contract is just for one part of the curbing and footpaths in particular. and seeing work's being done through all of our communities, I think is always a good thing. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Rossetti. Moving on to item C4.2, Place Names Committee meeting minutes. Councillor McCubbin.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move the Council receive and note the minutes of the Place Names Committee meeting held on the 27th of November 2018.
That was seconded by Councillor Rossetti. Is that motion opposed? If not, the motion's carried. Councillor McCubbin.
Yeah, unusually for me, I don't have very much to say in regard to this. It, again, was a very good meeting. Probably the only issue to address is the fact that Council has been informing people about their right to object under the to Place Names Victoria, whether if they've got a problem with the changing of a name. And we're working through that process. Might I say that we at the committee are very pleased with that process. We think it's important that ratepayers have a place to appeal if they don't believe we got it right, and basically they just check that we've done the processes correctly, and certainly there's some learnings to be had from that. We are currently working our way through a bunch of those. One in particular is Earl Street in Woodside, which we look to change to another name. Earl Street is split at the highway. There's an Earl Street that essentially goes to the left and one that goes to the right. You're not allowed to call them Earl Street left and Earl Street right, unfortunately. You've actually got to change the name of one totally, which we've been working on. So, yeah, again, we look forward to getting some results back about our processes in regard to that, and we're working diligently through that. So, thank you very much.
Thanks once again, Councillor McCubbin. Moving on to item C5.1, Briagolong Quarry Reserve Committee memberships. So item C5.1, Briagolong Quarry Reserve Committee membership. Councillor Rossetti.
No one else was standing up, Mayor, so I'm going to support you. I move that one council appoint the nominated members as detailed in the attached confidential report to the Briagolong Quarry Reserve Committee of Management for a 3-year period pursuant to the provisions of Section 86 of the Local Government Act 1989, and the rest as written.
Seconder for that motion, Councillor Ripper. Is that motion opposed? If not, the motion is carried.
I'm happy for Councillor Ripper to speak to that.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Rossetti. I'd just like to say that the community consultation with the Quarry Reserve, for those councillors who went, I'm sure that those councillors who hadn't visited the Quarry Reserve would have been very, very happy with what they saw, and meeting the relevant committee members who you would have witnessed that the work that they have done out there. And that is all in tip-top condition for the Christmas New Year period, and it allows campers within the Shire, outside the Shire, to come to an area which is minimal cost but is a safe place for everyone to camp. And I thank that committee very, very much. And those committee members who in the past have diligently worked in that area, thank you. And for those committee members who are currently coming on to the committee, I look forward to working with them. Thank you.
And can I just announce that all nominees will be sent an appointment outcome letter as well. If we move on to now item C5.2, Briagolong Recreation Reserve Committee memberships. Do I have someone to move that?
I'd like to move the Council appoint the nominated members as detailed in the attached confidential report to the Briagolong Rec Reserve Committee of Management for a 3-year period pursuant to the provisions of Section 86 of the Local Government Act of 1989. Part 2, I'd like to take that as read, please.
Thanks, Councillor McCubbin. Have a seconder for that motion. Councillor Hole. Is that motion opposed? The motion is not opposed. The motion is carried.
Thank you very much, Mayor. And turn on? Yes. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor McCubbin. Once again, this the Briagolong Rec Reserve has a committee of management who work once again very diligently for the local area, and I congratulate those committee members in the past, and I look forward to working with the committee members who are coming on board for the new year. Thank you very much. Thanks,
Councillor Ripper. And can I announce that all nominees will be sent an appointment outcome letter. Moving on to item C5.3, Cameron's Sporting Complex Committee memberships. Councillor Hole.
Before the rush starts, I'm going to move the Council appoint the nominated members as detailed in the attached confidential report to to the Cameron Sporting Complex Committee of Management for a 3-year period pursuant to the provisions of Section 86 of the Local Government Act of 1989 and as per .2 in the recommendation in the motion.
Seconder for that motion, Councillor By. Is that motion opposed? Not the motion's carried. Councillor Hull.
Just quickly, yeah, it was great to see just about every position on this committee was filled. One of the vacancies showing is through a lapse of time, I know the nomination has come in, and the other vacancy is that the club that is there has now shifted the sale onto the new multi-million-dollar complex, and probably won't be taking up the position or the need to be part of it. So, yeah, great community input.
Thanks, Councillor Hull. And again, can I announce that all nominees will be sent an appointment outcome letter. Moving on to item C5.4, Gordon Street Reserve Committee memberships. That would be you, Councillor Hull.
Excuse me. I'm going to move the council appoint the nominated members as detailed in the attached confidential report to the Gordon Street Recreation Reserve Committee of Management for a 3-year period pursuant to the provisions of Section 86 of the Local Government Act of 1989 and .2 as per my motion on the board.
Thanks, Councillor Hull. Do we have a second for that motion? Councillor Ripper. Is that motion opposed? Not the motion's carried. Councillor Hull.
Here again, the enthusiasm to fill up the committee was good, and it was interesting to note that the only vacancy that's to be filled is by one of the new clubs coming on, and I'm sure you'll find that in very short time as that season develops, there will be a representative join that organisation for the next 3 years.
Thanks, Councillor Hull. Item C5.5, Maffra Recreation Reserve Committee memberships. Do I have a mover for that motion? Councillor Ripper.
Thank you, Mayor. I will move Council appoint the nominated members as detailed in the attached confidential report to the Maffra Recreational Reserve Committee of Management for a 3-year period pursuant to the provisions of Section 86 of the Local Government Act 1989. Paragraph 2 as read.
Seconder for that motion, please. Councillor By. Is that motion opposed? If not, the motion's carried. Councillor Ripper.
Thank you, Mayor. Currently, the Maffra Recreation Reserve is undergoing drainage issues at the moment, which is looking good to be finished in good time for the relevant committees that use that area, and it will, in the end, fix up some of the issues that they've had over a period of time. So we thank everyone concerned there for what's happening there, and I thank the previous committee for the hard and diligent work, and I look forward to working as the council who sits on that committee with the incoming committee. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Ripper, and I'll repeat again the message I've repeated many times already. Moving on to item C, 5.6, Newry Recreation Reserve Committee memberships. Councillor Hull.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm going to move that council appoint the nominated members as detailed in the attached confidential report to the Newry Recreation Reserve Committee of Management for a 3-year period pursuant to the provisions of Section 86 of the Local Government Act of 1989 and .2 as per my motion as on the board.
Seconded, Councillor Crosley. Is that motion opposed? Not the motion's carried. Councillor Hull, do you wish to speak to that?
Yeah, look, it's great to see one of our little smaller communities, Newry one side, Upper Maffra on the other side of the road, but they all combine to utilise the name Newry, work together, and it's good to see that they're able to get the committee to get formulated without having to go to a great deal of trouble.
Thanks, Councillor Hull, and that same announcement prevails again. Item C 5.7, Newry Recreation Reserve Committee of Management minutes. And I think I'm back in your hands again, Councillor Hull.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm going to move the council receive the minutes from the Newry Recreation Reserve Committee of Management general meeting held on the 29th of October 2018.
Second to that motion, Councillor McCubbin. Is that motion opposed? If not, the motion's carried. Councillor Hull, do you wish to speak to that?
Just briefly, Mayor. Like most of the meetings of this group, nearly all the committee members were there, and their minutes show that briefly they look after the assets that they've got out there and the work on behalf of their community. They are a great little group and organisation who probably meet each other every day in the main street of Maffra, main street of Newry, and I'm sure there's a lot of local knowledge is shared in that time. But it's good to see them operating, and the Upper Maffra Mechanics Institute, for those of you who haven't been out there with the new work, it's been put in there nearly $300,000 worth of money from the Treasury Authority. It pays to go and have a look to see what the community has done. They are so proud of it. They haven't quite finished it, but the excitement of that hall, which is a dog hall, but the community has strong control of it, and they have added to the pleasure of being a member of that community. But it's on the Upper Maffra side, not on the Newry side.
Thanks, Councillor Hull. CEO, any urgent business?
No urgent business.
Any chat room comments?
No chat room
Comments. Do we have anyone from the gallery who wishes to make a contribution? If not, I don't think we won't need to move into closed session that I'm aware of. Given that we're at the end of the meeting, can I just simply say to councillor colleagues, what a great job all year. It's been fantastic being part of this. So thank you for your tireless efforts. It's been outstanding to the CEO, his team, the senior management team, and all of the staff at Wellington Shire. It's been an absolute privilege for me to come into the position of mayor late in the year, and can I wish all of our staff, the councillors, and to the Wellington broader community all the very best for Christmas and a safe, happy and prosperous 2019, and I'll declare the meeting closed.